Hey everyone, this is Nick, and this is your Linux and open source news fix for the first half of December 2021. This time we have the release of PopOS 21.10, updates to Mesa drivers to give Minecraft a sizable performance boost, Steam being close to release on Chrome OS, and Amazon hiring Proton developers. Let's get started, just like you should get started with monitoring your internet connection with today's sponsor. Thanks to Safing for sponsoring this video. You might already have seen their Portmaster tool on the channel. It lets you monitor and control any detail of your internet connection with a simple graphical user interface through the use of block lists, profiles depending on your current connection, and per app settings. It's also completely open source and free. Now, what you might not know about Safing is that they're also developing the SPN, the Safing Private Network. It's a powerful VPN alternative which spreads your connections across the globe instead of rerouting all your connections to only one server. So with the SPN you can virtually be everywhere at once. If that's something you'd like to try, or if you want to support Safing's open source work, you can subscribe to the SPN right now and you'll get it for free through the whole month of December. So just click the link in the description below to either get the Portmaster tool or to subscribe to the SPN. Let's begin with the Linux news. Steam might be coming to Chrome OS. The system, codenamed Borealis, would allow Chrome OS users to play their Steam games directly on their Chromebooks and Chromeboxes without requiring them to access the underlying Gen 2 base. There will also seemingly be a game compatibility reporting system with Proton, so people can provide feedback to Google and Valve to improve Proton and make it work with more games, or at least notify the relevant developers that something doesn't work as it should. I personally wouldn't use Chrome OS, but it's good to have more focus on Linux gaming and Proton so we can all benefit. KDE Gear, the application collection for KDE, has been updated to version 21.12. Dolphin now lets you put hidden files and folders at the bottom of the view, and adds preview for comic book files with the CBZ extension. The screenshot tool, Spectacle, now lets you set specific actions when the tool opens, like automatically taking a screenshot, and it gets more feature parity on Wayland. Kdenlive gets a bunch of new features that I will talk about in a few minutes. Console puts all the layer options in a drop-down menu to simplify the interface, and gets an SSH manager, and most other apps get minor features or bug fixes. These updates should already be available in Neon and through Flatpak. Nate Graham, one of the main KDE developers, writes another blog post stating that Linux needs to be pre-installed on hardware to succeed, and I couldn't agree more. He points out that while features, ergonomics, and usability are important and are being worked on, we could have the best designed operating system and still not matter in terms of market share as long as people don't have a way to get that OS onto their devices right when they buy them. People use what's provided, and they don't change their OS, and they memorize their system instead of learning and understanding it. So providing hardware with Linux out of the box would basically mean that people would get used to it in no time. That's a point of view I also explored in a previous video. I'll leave a link in the card up top. Mint got a new beta for its 20.3 release. I'll cover it in more detail when the full version is out, probably in a video in January, because seriously, why is everyone releasing new stuff at the end of December? Here are the major updates though. The theme has been revamped and modernized, with more rounded corners, larger title bars, and window controls. The native media apps now use a dark theme by default so you can focus on the content and not on the app itself. The calendar applet now shows calendar events. The Sticky Notes app gets search functionality, the PDF reader reads in the right direction when reading manga, and there's a new library tool that for now only shows your PDFs, but will extend to other document types. PopOS 21.10 was released. While it doesn't bring as many changes as the previous one did with the introduction of the Cosmic Desktop, it still changes things up. The new Applications panel is no longer full screen, it floats in the middle of the screen and it uses your folders as tabs that are always visible. I quite like that new organization. It will also always open on the display that has mouse focus, which is A+. A new tech preview of PopOS for Raspberry Pi 4 is now also out, and PopOS 21.10 brings the latest Linux kernel, which will get updated frequently, as well as the latest NVIDIA drivers. It also has a refresh OS option when installing from the recovery partition, which is now more discoverable and lets you install just the OS while keeping your files, something that all distros should have out of the box. PopOS now also hosts their own repos on their own infrastructure, and it of course also brings the updates from GNOME 40. Now let's move on to the open source news. Mozilla's revenue is growing, expected to reach more than $500 million this year. It seems that revenue from their services is now growing a bit, especially with the VPN, Private Relay, and Pocket. They now account for 14% of Mozilla's revenue, and the VPN grew 450% in 2021, although whether that's impressive or not depends on where they started in 2020. Unfortunately, most of Mozilla's revenue is still coming from Google, with 84% of their total income, so Mozilla is still far from being independent from the tech giant. It's still nice to see the foundation being able to slowly lift themselves from that dependency, and let's hope those services keep growing in the future. Now, a bug in a very widespread open source library called log4j has been causing panic among the infosec community. This framework based on Java serves to track activity like your IP address, your browser, which page you viewed, and more. It is under the Apache Foundation services, and it's used by a ton of companies, including Apple, Microsoft, Steam, Twitter, or Cloudflare. The bug allows attackers to pass malicious code as a variable, and that code gets executed immediately, so a hacker could basically make any computer do whatever they want. It doesn't mean that all servers are immediately vulnerable, but it's still an enormous risk. A patch was released, but it still sparked a debate on how much open source contributors should be compensated for their work, to incite people to do more testing and more security-related work. Now let's move on to the new app releases. Blender 3.0 was released with a monstrous number of new features. Rendering speeds have been improved from 2 to 8 times thanks to a rewritten GPU kernel and scheduler. Blender 3 adds support for AMD HIP on Windows, and the same support should land on Linux for version 3.1. Blender got a visual refresh as well, while not changing how the UI works to not waste people's time. File loading times have also been improved thanks to Z standard compression. There's also a new asset browser to have a more visual way of working with 3D models and adding them to a scene. It seems like a must-have update for all Blender users out there, and this app definitely seems like a fantastic showcase for open source in general. Firefox 95 was released, and it improves the browser security by a ton, thanks to the new RLBox technology. This new process, instead of just sandboxing each website you open, compiles code in WebAssembly and then into native code. This means that code can't jump to the rest of the program and can't access memory outside of its allocated region. In more understandable terms, it means that Firefox is now much more secure out of the box. Among other changes, the picture-in-picture button can now move to the left or the right of a video, and Firefox enables site isolation for all users. Firefox also adds a user agent override for Slack.com to let users use the calls feature. KDE 21.10 has been released, as I mentioned previously. It improves on the open source video editor quite a lot with a new slip tool, multicam editing, letting you pick a camera angle if you have multiple ones for the same scene, and a completely revamped motion tracker that is much more accurate compared to the previous one. It also comes with new obscuration filters to pixelate the tracked object or blur it. You can also create new bins to better organize your media assets. A lot of fixes have also been applied to the program, which should be now more fast and more stable. There's still no news on the hardware acceleration front though. So let's conclude this video with the gaming news. RPCS 3, the PS3 emulator, added a lot of game fixes, on top of boasting of being able to start any PS3 game. These new fixes correct graphical glitches on many popular games like Uncharted 2 and 3, The Last of Us or Ratchet & Clank. These games now exhibit better dynamic shadows and fixed aiming reticles. Other games now can benefit from uncapped frame rates. Resident Evil Code Veronica X also has better dynamic shadows, just like Dragon's Dogma. It really seems like a fantastic update for users of that emulator. Now, Minecraft will get 30% more performance on Linux for Mesa drivers users. The new release of these drivers will enable threaded OpenGL for Minecraft, which means that it will be able to use much more of your hardware to actually render the game. You can already turn it on with a command line in the official Minecraft launcher, but with the new drivers release, it will be enabled by default for everyone. Other games already benefit from this improvement, like Alien Isolation, Civilization 6, or various Saints Row games. Now, BattleEye support on Linux keeps expanding, with more titles gaining support. The current list includes Mountain Blade Bannerlord 2, Ark Survival Evolved, Arma 3, DayZ, Unturned, and PlanetSide 2, and other games should see that support enabled when the Steam Deck releases. Unfortunately, it seems like PUBG will move to another anti-cheat and DRM solution that is kernel-based and thus probably won't be supported on Linux at all. Wine 6.23 is now out, with more libraries converted to the PE format, this time Mount Manager and Core Audio, which should make them work better. There is now also optional support to use the distro's PE libraries, and WoW 64 mode gained support for exception handling. 48 bugs in total were fixed in this release, including for Layers of Fear, the Rockstar Games Launcher, GTA 1997, GIMP, or Tetris. And finally, Amazon is now hiring developers to work on Proton and Wine, and more Linux developers to work on their game streaming service, Luna. They plan to use Windows for this, but it seems they might be moving to Linux, as they have posted job offers to work on Proton and Wine to help running games in a stable and performant manner, as they put it. With Steam and Chrome OS, the Steam Deck, all the work that Valve already does, the support for anti-cheat software, and now Amazon throwing its slot in with Linux and Proton, I have no doubt that Linux will become a superb gaming platform in the future. And that concludes it for this video, guys. It was made possible by Slimbook. If you don't know about them, they're based in Valencia, Spain, and they make Linux laptops and desktops. I only use their stuff nowadays. Their Slimbook Pro X14 laptop, their Slimbook Chimera desktop, their Slimbook RGB keyboard. They are really awesome devices. I can only recommend them, so if you need a new Linux device, check the link in the description below. Now, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't hesitate to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and if you didn't, you can dislike and tell me why in the comments. And finally, if you want to help support the channel, you can join my Patreon subscribers and my YouTube members, and you'll get access to a weekly podcast and the right to vote on the next topics I'll cover. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!